It's my huge honor to introduce our keynote speaker for breakfast this morning, Michael McGovern. His bio is in the printed program, so I won't reread it, but let me just say this. Mike is Rotary International's point person on Polio Plus, our longtime effort to eradicate polio worldwide. He is chair of the Rotary International Polio Plus Committee, and he represents Rotary International on the Polio Oversight Board. That board is a consortium of people around the world that work with us, the World Health Organization, the US CDC, UNICEF, Gavi, and other agencies. Mike is a 39-year Rotarian. He's a member of the Rotary Club of South Portland, Cape Elizabeth in Maine. He has served as a director of Rotary International and also as a trustee of our Rotary Foundation. Notwithstanding his many accomplishments and very responsible positions, Mike is a very down-to-earth person, and I've enjoyed getting to know him as his aide the last couple days. Please welcome Mike McGovern.
I won't block the screen when it matters. So. Good morning, everyone. Boy, it had to be a good breakfast. There's a big crowd here, and it was a good breakfast. First of all, thank you, Bruce, for inviting me. Thank you, Michael, for watching after me. It's wonderful to be here. You know, Rotary to me has always been acquaintance as an opportunity for service. That's what it's all about. We work with friends in our clubs. We work with friends otherwise. And today, I want to note, I'm sitting next to a friend who was a governor of this district the same time I was the district governor. I always say we didn't get it right in one millennium, and we needed to continue it into the next millennium. We were governors in 99, 2000. And you know, Phil was reminding me of sitting just front and back of each other at a council legislation in 2003. And he remembered things that I did not remember. So let's hear it for past director Phil Silvers. Thank you. So, I'm here to talk about polio. It's not always the most exciting topic. Sometimes people wonder, you know, is there really any reason to have this guy here to update us? And, you know, there is a lot going on. There are a lot of questions. There are a lot of questions about how close are we? There are a lot of questions about, well, what are you doing about all of the anti-vaccine chatter in Washington and elsewhere? And how are you going to talk about that without getting political? I'll try. And you know, and also, you know, in the end, it's all about the kids. So I want to begin. There's a slide here that I'm obviously blocking, and we look at the priorities every year of what we need to do to eradicate polio. And I want to talk about Rotarian engagement. And I want to tell, I like asides and different stories. I joined Rotary, as Michael mentioned, 39 years ago. I was asked 5 times to join Rotary before I joined. I was doing graduate school at the same time, and sometimes you think when people say no, you don't go back to them. Sometimes you should go back to them, because they may have something to contribute to your club in the service in your community or otherwise. So I went to my first meeting. They gave me the Rotary pin. I felt good. I went home. The second meeting, the speaker was talking about a Rotary Foundation program at the time, Ambassadorial Scholars. He was a professor at Bowdoin College. I had applied to Bowdoin College and was turned down. I thought, what is the Rotary Club trying to tell me? I thought, well, good, I'm getting a free lecture from a Bowdoin professor as a result of Rotary. So the third meeting I go to, it's a club assembly. And some member gets up and starts complaining, we haven't been following the membership recruitment and membership approval rules. We just had a member join that we didn't follow any of the rules. And I'm sitting there. I never asked, but because I had said no so many times, my guess is they hadn't gone through whatever the official process was at that time, because he'd gone through it earlier. So I may be an illegitimate Rotarian. So the next meeting, David Smith, member of the club, calls me before the meeting. Mike, I'd like you to come to the meeting early next week, and let's have a drink together. My guess is maybe he's telling me I got kicked out of the club because I hadn't followed the rules. But no, I sit down. We were meeting at a golf course, a view similar to this, at the club at the time. And he said, Michael, Rotary is trying to raise money to eradicate polio. We want from you $1,000. I was 30 years old. I had just been appointed to my position. I had just bought a house and had a mortgage. And remember, this was 1986. $1,000 to a young person, had probably never given $100 to any given charity at once. $1,000. So anyway, I thought about it. And I said I would give $500 to polio. And because I actually enjoyed that Bowdoin professor, I said I'll give $500 to the annual fund. And so then, about a year later, 2 years later, it was a 3-year commitment. I get approached by one of the club officers and says, Michael, you haven't fulfilled your polio commitment. You didn't get the $1,000, you haven't given the $1,000. And my response was, all of you have dealt with this. They screwed up the record keeping. They had forgotten that I had divided the money between both the annual fund and the polio fund. So, the point is never get discouraged. We're not getting discouraged on ending polio, and we shouldn't get discouraged about all the other things we do. In the end, things work out. In the end, things get done. So the number one priority for us this year is Rotarian engagement. Rotarian engagement in polio eradication. It's not easy. How many of you have ever put polio drops in a child? We have, look at these hands. There's more than a dozen hands. It is increasingly difficult to do that. I was in Pakistan recently. We have a very small polio staff there. And I asked them, how many individuals can you accommodate a year to come on a national immunization day? The answer was 150. They need to keep the group small. There's only so many Rotarians to host them. They're busy eradicating polio. Most of the drops are given by frontline workers who are local individuals. There's some issues with Rotarians from other places, can't go to a lot of areas of the country. There's issues of security. There's all these issues. So, some still go to India, but India mostly does the injectable, polio vaccines now. They don't do so much the oral polio drops. Nigeria still hosts some, but that great opportunity that so many of you have benefited from and became, great followers of polio eradication, that's not as available. But I will say the 150 who go get treated very well, and all of those positions aren't fully subscribed. So, if someone wanted to lead a team to go to Pakistan, you can do it. Most places I'd go, I'd warn, but it's very hot. I don't think I need to give that warning here. But at the same time, it all works out. So Rotarian engagement, it's that portion of it. It's the things like the polio walks, the walking 2,000 steps today. It's all these things that go on, the activities that you have. It's the El Tour de Tucson. The bicycle ride that you see so many people, it's that visibility. There are many things you can do. The other thing you can obviously do is give funding. This district gave, I looked at the last 2 years together. It was about the same each year. But this district gave per capita $78 over the last 2 years each year. That's pretty good. It can, obviously, it'd be a nice goal to go 100 or more, but it's fairly good. So I commend you for that. I thank you for that. That's very generous. I saw some numbers on the screen. You know, it was about $107,000 last year. That's good, but it's very uneven. I asked Rotary International for a copy of the reports from this district, and there are clubs that are very generous, and then there are clubs that have a big zero next to them. You know, I can't imagine being engaged to the level that you're not engaged at all as a Rotary club. So, you know, I'd encourage every club to look in your hearts, to look at the fact that this is the largest humanitarian project ever taken on by a service club, and to think about participating in it. Think about engaging. Again, it's mostly very generous. Obviously, for $78 per capita, there's some people who are giving very generously. There are some people who may be giving $5. It doesn't, it all matters, and it's all appreciated, and it takes $1, full cost in to immunize a child, $1. The vaccine itself is 14 cents. The balance goes to help pay for the frontline workers who are paid to deliver the vaccines. We have to keep the vaccines cold. We buy coolers like you get from Coleman. Some of them may be Coleman coolers. We also buy big refrigerators and the rest. We have transportation costs to all those things. We also fund quite a bit UNICEF. And UNICEF does what they call social mobilization. They are the ones that convince people to actually have their children get polio. How many of you ever heard the expression or seen it on Facebook, whatever, vaccines saves lives? Anybody see that? A lot of it is. That is really not true. It's vaccinations that save lives. Vaccines do no good if they're not put into the mouths or they're not put into the arms of children. Last year, as a result of the generosity of Rotarians and the other governments we fund, just short of 1 billion times kids were vaccinated. Just short of 1 billion times. So the budget, if you can extrapolate it, was about $1 billion. It was actually 1.1 billion last year. So, you know, and so that is, you know, that's ultimate engagement is if you can give those drops, not everyone can do it, but it's actually donating that. So that's, you know, engagement, you know, it's one of the highest priorities of Rotary International itself, Rotarian engagement. I'm sure your current governor, Bruce, has talked about it. I'm sure last year's governor talk about it. And people stay in Rotary. They go back to that 5th meeting that I went to after being basically told maybe I wasn't welcome, and then they continue beyond that. So it's definitely one of our priorities this year. Second is, you know, you look at polio, and when Rotary started this first in the Philippines in '79, and then in the mid '80s in the rest of the world, there were 125 countries where polio was endemic. Today it's 2, and within those countries, Afghanistan and Pakistan, you know, I could give you a lesson in geography. I could name the communities, name the provinces, name the areas where polio is. In most of those countries, it's not all over the place. Although you will see we do a lot of environmental sampling to see if polio's in the water. Seems to be more of that now. But kids aren't getting polio because most of the kids are vaccinated now. You know, it's a sign. There's only 2 places in Pakistan where we call them reservoirs, where polio has never disappeared. You know, some communities outside of Karachi and up in the north where the Taliban hold sway, the Pakistan Taliban. And that's it. In Afghanistan, it's an area, Kandahar, which a lot of us remember seeing in the news. It's where the supreme leader of the Taliban lives, and he isn't that cooperative at times. But you know, for the most part, it's working. But so we're focused, you know, Rotary has to spend, thanks to your generosity, $150 million a year on polio eradication. That is our donation to the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. It all goes to UNICEF. It all goes to the World Health Organization. 50 million of that hopefully comes from Rotarians like you and from across the world. And then when we spend that 50 million, which the polio committee is actually meeting next week in Evanston to allocate that 50 million, we then notify the Gates Foundation, and they wire us $100 million. That's how everyone asks, well, if I give this way, is it matched? If I give that way, it's matched. What is matched is the money being spent. If we spend up to $50 million, they will match any amount up to $50 million with $100 million. And the Rotary, one way or another, has reached that goal every year. I will say, this last year we fell a little bit short. You know, we could have raised more money. It was mainly in the area of what we call major donors. There was a very generous donor in India who would give $1 million 19 straight years until last year. If you remember, India and Pakistan weren't getting along. That might have had something to do with it. There were a couple of other major donors, and I mean, you know, people give it close to $1 million who didn't come through. So anyway, it fell short. One of the reasons it fell short, and I should have mentioned this earlier, people wonder, you know, what percentage of Rotarians give to polio around the world. You know, we have a percentage, but it doesn't include amounts that are channeled through clubs that Rotarians don't get individual credit for. So the number is higher than the number I'm about to say, 14.7%. So we have room. We have room for growth, and it's very uneven. In the United States here, it's a lot more than that. But, you know, to be frank, India celebrated tremendously their great success 13, 14 years ago in eradicating polio, but their giving dropped to near zero. And, you know, we're working on India, we're working on many other countries, and obviously as well. But we need to focus on the high-risk areas. We need accountability. Phil, who I mentioned earlier, he was chair of something called the Rotary Cadre. They are experts in different fields from, you know, mainly following the areas of focus, but some of them are, you know, accountants, those type things. We have members of the cadre every year look at all of the funding we give and to make sure that it's being spent the way it should be. We don't give money to governments, we give money to UNICEF and WHO. All of the frontline workers are paid by electronic delivery from the headquarters of UNICEF and WHO, mainly WHO, so that there's no skimming off the top by other local people with the money. So, you know, there's a lot of integrity and honesty built into the system. And finally, we need to advocate for funding. And this is not only funding for, you know, from Rotarians, it's also, we advocate to the governments of the world. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Finally, then the next slide. This one takes the longest. So anyway, you know, you can't get up and speak to a group unless you have a little bit of credibility. And the way to get credibility is you gave yourself or you undertook the action that you're asking for. This is my immunization record. This is I grew up, I'm a Catholic, and there was a baby book. I don't know, did any of you still have a baby book? Yeah, you do. Mine was blue. It was a Catholic boys' baby book. So my mother writes in it all the times I had different vaccines. I had my first one in March of '57. I was a year old. My second one a year later, and the third one in 1958. I was fortunate. I was born right after Dr. Salk came up with his polio vaccine, and I had a mother who went door to door for the March of Dimes, which was paying for the money of the research, but also I can remember the dining room table. We always ate in the kitchen. We never ate in the dining room. But the dining room table was filled with envelopes from people from all over the city of Portland came in and dropped off the collections they had made. So, you know, polio, you know, I imagine all of you were immunized. I hope parents still keep track of when their kids are immunized. But it's that, you know, that's part of the engagement, that's part of the involvement. And on the next slide, this is Aziz Memon. Aziz Memon is our polio chair in Pakistan. He works full-time at it. He's a very successful businessman. If you want anything done in Pakistan, you need a visa, you need anything, you talk to Aziz. It happens. This year, I've had 3 meetings with the Prime Minister of Pakistan. The Prime Minister, the #1 person, because of Aziz. It's been in groups, but we had a visit there last month, and he gave us an hour. And the point I'm trying to make is he's a wonderful person. Rotarians like him get this done, but it's also Rotarians like you who can have the influence to your senators, your new House member here in this district who hasn't taken office yet, as well as other individuals around. On the next slide, anyone know who this is? This is the president of Rotary International, Francesco Arezzo. And a lot of you know he became president on very short notice, 2 or 3 weeks before he was sitting at home. He's a dentist. He's standing at the dentist chair, causing pain and suffering to someone. So anyway, he comes to the conference. He just gets named, shows up in Calgary at the Rotary Convention, and Aziz and I went to see him. Francesco, Mr. President-elect, you need to come to Pakistan. He made his very first visit as president, other than going to Evanston. But as president, his very first visit was to Pakistan to see the polio program. It shows you about his dedication and commitment. I also want to say that one reason we really wanted him to come is you look at most of the men and women become president. You look online, and they've had lots of engagement, lots of involvement with polio. We couldn't find any for him. He may have done it, but there was no record of it. I don't know how much he gave, any of that. But anyway, we recruited him, he showed up. And the folks in back, directly in back of him, is the head of the polio program in Pakistan, the Gates Foundation person in Pakistan, the WHO person in Pakistan. But the reason I have this picture is not, let me get out of the way here more. I like the present picture, but divert your eyes to the lower left-hand corner. The president had just immunized this young girl, and the next person he was to immunize was this boy. This boy was well coached. He had his mouth open. He was ready to go, but look at his T-shirt too. Boss. Imagine it's the clothing outfit. But, sometimes you take a picture, and it's the picture you're not intending to take is there's a component of it's the best sort. So oftentimes I crop pictures. I didn't crop this one. That kid was staying, and if we could get every child to be that eager. Of course, I was asked to immunize kids at this event, and the kid was screaming and hollering, and there was no, next slide. It's the way it goes. Part of Rotarian engagement is, doing different things. This one on the left, there's 2 gentlemen, one's from Iowa, and I think the other is New Jersey, who last year, one of those gentlemen, another gentleman, 2 years ago, went around the world to raise money for polio. They've been asked to speak since to 138 Rotary audiences who, Rotarians have been given money, and they raised all of the expenses of the trip, the air fuel, the servicing, all they donated themselves. No involvement. Very impressive. They're now doing a around the Atlantic thing, and they're going to the Azores, and they're going to end up next Sunday, a week from today, in Maine, in New Hampshire, in my district, just over the border, to celebrate the completion of this thing. But it's folks like that. It's always amazing what people do. The woman on the lower half here, she's Jessie Harmon. She's from Australia. She's just became, I think, a director of Rotary. I'm not sure of the exact timing, but known her for many years. She climbed a month or so ago to the base of Mount Everest to raise money for polio eradication. I think there's going to be a story in the Rotarian in a few months for this other photo. We asked, what are we asked to do for polio? What do we do for polio? This photo, the man on the left was one of my predecessors as the polio chair, Dr. Bob Scott from Ontario. Wonderful man. He's now in his mid-90s, I think, or 93, 94. Just a wonderful person. The young girl who they gave polio drops and apparently flowers to. And the man in the middle, his name, Wasia. 2 months after this picture was taken, a motorcycle person drove by and shot him dead. He died. His brother, who I've met a couple of times, still works for the polio program. The first time I met him, he was walking across the hotel lobby as he said to someone, "I want you to meet." And I thought he was a polio victim, polio survivor. He was a polio survivor, a victim of working in the polio program, but some militants in Karachi had injured his legs and killed him. So, when people say, "Why do you do so much for polio? Why do you give the money you do?" What little I do doesn't compare to what that man did, and about 100 others over the years in Nigeria and in Pakistan and Afghanistan. So what people do to make their kids safe from polio, their own kids, the kids from the country, is totally amazing. On the next slide, this is back to, do vaccinations work? You look at this slide. Problem. Let me go down so I'm not in the way all the time. You look when the Salk vaccine came through, and then you look, the Sabin is the oral polio. Salk is the shot in the arm. So you look as soon as, 1953 was a high year before the Salk vaccine came along in 55. But you look at, when I was getting the vaccines, and when a lot of you, I assume you're about the same age I am, were getting the vaccines, that was that big slide. I sometimes use the analogy. Anyone remember the game Chutes and Ladders? Chutes and Ladders, you throw the dice, and there'd be ladders that you'd go up if you landed on a lucky spot, and then you'd land on an area that had a slide, and you'd go down. Sometimes I think that's polio eradication. We have good years, we have bad years, we have setbacks, we have challenges, but in the end, that top left spot, I think it's space 100 or whatever it is on the board, we're getting closer to that. Dr. Tedros, the head of the World Health Organization, said that at the Calgary Convention, and Bill Gates also said it in a video. So that's the progress that we're seeing. The next slide. A lot of what we do is advocacy. And I don't know what happened to the lower slide there, but the lower slide is I cut off half of Mitch McConnell's face in the slide. Mitch McConnell, the longtime Republican leader of the U.S. Senate, is one of our most ardent supporters of polio eradication. He's a polio survivor. And when he that's up on a little stage, and we have a reception every May in that same room as the other picture. He comes to our reception and thanks Rotary. On the just directly opposite, that woman is Tammy Duckworth. She is one of the most progressive senators in the U.S. Senate. She is a survivor in a wheelchair of, I believe it was the Afghanistan war, but she had her legs, severely impacted by that. And every year we have this reception and give awards. The upper left, that is, I encourage you to have your congressperson, have your senator to your Rotary Club. You might want to avoid an election year, but this isn't one in most places. But next year is, make sure they know that Rotarians are interested in polio eradication. The U.S. government funding is extremely important. In the upper left, that's Marie Williams. I was her assistant district governor, or whatever they called it at one point. And she's the woman that she's talking to in red. That woman, her name is Susan Collins. She happens to be a senator from my state, but she also happens to be the chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee. Mark Maloney, last year's trustee chair, is there. He also, I don't have a picture of it, we discovered that his congressperson is we knew his congressperson is the head of one of the chief appropriation subcommittees in the House that gives the money to the CDC. Very, very conservative, yet when it came out of both committees, the funding for this year, for the budget, $180 million for the CDC and $85 million for now what's the State Department, but the money was USAID. We had 100% support for the appropriation for polio, and every Republican on the final vote voted yes in both committees. Every Democrat voted no. The reason being is a year ago, when they had those votes, it was directly the opposite. When it comes to the final vote, because it's bunched in with a whole lot of stuff, and a lot of cuts, a lot of reductions, and so, we work very closely with both parties. They all support the polio appropriation, but we could always see political ads saying they don't, because when the final bill happens, it's encompassed with other things. And the other one really isn't advocacy, but UNICEF, we've given UNICEF, Rotary, over the years, over $1 billion. And they had a reception a year ago, and they wrote, in appreciation of our most cherished partner, the Rotary Foundation of Rotary International, your unwavering dedication and contributions to eradicate polio have profoundly impacted the lives of countless children. Together we'll end polio. UNICEF is a very respected organization. The Rotary Foundation of Rotary International, by the plaque they gave us, is their most respected partner. That's just amazing. We belong to an amazing organization. Next slide. So U.S. funding, all of the articles, there's a lot of tough stuff going on, I'll admit it. But if you look at the U.S. government funding, it's basically gone up every year since 2009 or been essentially steady. That's not what you're reading in the newspaper. It's not what you're seeing. The money's still coming. We've had to fight for it. I will admit it hasn't been easy. But as it now stands, both appropriations committees have recommended level funding for 2026. That's because of all of you. It's because of Rotary. Some refer to us as the heart and soul of this. It's because of that. And there's polls in America. We hear all about anti-vaccine activity. There was a poll that came out 2 weeks ago. Should the U.S. government spend the same, more, or less for vaccines? The U.S. government should spend less, was 6% of the American population. So you think about that, and we were very reticent at the beginning when the environment was challenging at the beginning of the year, what to say, what to do. We didn't want to be political, but the money is important. The money saves lives. But when you read that it's, we're fighting against 6% of the population. So we go up on Capitol Hill, we meet with members of the House, members of the Senate, and we meet with staff. We met this year with probably 150 of those individuals, evenly divided by both parties. Not a single person we spoke to did not support Rotary advocating and appropriating and having appropriated the money for polio eradication. So there's a lot of support there, but in this environment, it's important to keep it. But if you look, the U.S. government's given over $5 billion since 1985. It's pretty amazing. Rotary, your contributions have now added up, including direct donations, club donations, district designated funds, and investment earnings, about $1.6 billion. The Gates Foundation has, thank you, generous. The Gates Foundation didn't always match. They have now entrusted Rotary with $1.5 billion to allocate to the various needs. So, it's, there may be one other donor, but in the health field, the Gates Foundation doesn't support anything at a higher level than they support polio eradication. So it's very helpful. Next slide. This is, as I mentioned, the president of Rotary went to meet. That's the Prime Minister of Pakistan. Very happy to meet with him. There was a group of us surrounding the table. We had to, I don't know what the guy in the back was there for, but he's watching God to make sure that we didn't do anything bad. So on the next slide, this is in Makati in the Philippines. This is a plaque. The Rotary Club there actually has an office, and this is where the very first vaccine took place in 1979. I was there quite a few years ago, and the typical hospitality package of Filipino Rotarians, they said, "We want to take you golfing." I said, "No, I'm not going golfing." And they took me to different other places, but I'll never forget this visit. Where it all began. I was on the elevator when Bruce was in Orlando last January to district governor gets on me. And when I first went there, he was the Rotarian who gave me the tour of the area of the office, showed me the plaque or whatever. And he told me it was a little girl. She was there, her mother presented her for the polio drops. And he said the mother still lives in the neighborhood across from here, the office. It's a very poor neighborhood. The daughter, who was vaccinated in 1979, I would make her say she was 2 then, so extrapolate the years, a little over 50. She lives in Malaysia, is doing well. We often talk about the last one who got polio in a different country. I hope, and she hasn't said yes yet, to appear at a Rotary function. There's a little shyness there or whatever. I hope to meet that girl, that woman now, where it all began, and where, because it began there, because the Filipinos asked the rest of the world to do it, because Rotary asked all of these partners to do it. We brought Bill Gates to vaccinations. He can blame us for all the negative publicity he gets. We brought the WHO in, we brought the UNICEF in, we brought CDC in, Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, actually Gates brought them in. But all of it was because of the Rotarians in the Philippines who decided to move on and think big. On the next slide, so the annual fundraising goal is $50 million. Gates still's matching it through 2029. We like $1. We have polio cans on the table at my club, 50 cents. It doesn't matter. They don't get individual credit for it, but regardless, it all adds up. And encouragement of $1,500 per year from clubs and 20% of DDF. On the next slide, Polio Plus Society. Michael is the coordinator of that. And this is, if you pledge to contribute at least $100 each year until the World Health Organization certifies that polio has been fully eradicated and the world is polio free, you pledge $100 a year until the last child is immunized. This, you're making a pledge, you don't know how much it's for. I hope it's like for $200, $100 a year for 2 years. I can't promise that, but there are some who think we're that close. I don't know. I would love to promise that we'll have no vaccines, but I think if we follow those priorities, I think if we continue to particularly make inroads in influencing important people for our cause in Pakistan and Afghanistan and across the central belt of Africa, I think we can do that. So if you're interested in Polio Plus Society, there's a pin. You get another pin for those of you that love pins. And even if you don't, it's a nice thing to have tucked in a drawer to know that you contributed. But think about it. It's that's 100 kids getting vaccinated. 100 kids, and you can say when your grandchildren are speaking to their grandchildren, they can say your whatever the relationship was a Rotarian who helped to bring about the end of polio. It's really significant. On the next slide, this is a big undertaking. I often go to Rotary audiences and I say, I want to quote the United States President. And you can see people at distance saying, why are you quoting the United States President? I did it in Ireland a couple of years ago. And then I say, the United States President, John F. Kennedy. People relax a little bit. And that's not, it's a fact, people have different reactions. People would have said the same thing if I was going to quote Joe Biden, who didn't like Joe Biden. So don't take it as what you might take it as. John F. Kennedy said, "We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, and one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win." This was the moonshot. This was a speech at Rice University over in Texas, 1962. Polio eradication is our moonshot. It's one we share with others, and we move to the next slide. The last slide. Can your club say this? We choose to end polio. We choose to end polio and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they're hard, because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we intend to win, and the others too. And I want to underline, and the others too. Polio may be and is the #1 humanitarian priority of Rotary International, Rotary Foundation, of individual Rotary clubs. But all the other things you do are crucially important. And I encourage all of your clubs, if there's a need in your community that you think you might not have the capacity to do, you think you might, you have doubters, think about this. You have the skills, you have the challenges, you have the energies, and you know other people who you can ask to help you. So, help to end polio, but also don't forget the other important things that you do. Dr. Tedros, the head of the World Health Organization, Rotary's mantra is the audacity to start the job and to finish it. You had the audacity to dream of eradicating polio, and I know you have the tenacity to finish the job. He made those comments in Calgary. I was with him on Monday. He's consistent, he's determined. Dr. Catherine Russell, the head of UNICEF, they asked her in an interview, what gives you hope that polio eradication is possible? It's simple for me, the dedication and heroic efforts of frontline workers and the unwavering commitment of donors and partners like Rotary, who will stop until we reach every child. Bill Gates, Rotary continues to be the heart and soul of polio eradication. We are close. I already have my fingers like this, but I don't do that anymore. We are close. We're going to get it done, but we need to stay together. We need to pull together, as President Francesco's presidential message that he assumed, and that you see, I don't know if Bruce has got the pin on today, unite for good. Polio eradication is uniting for good. Rotary is uniting for good. The work that you do with your friends in your individual communities, unite for good. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I look forward to seeing many of you in the months and years ahead, as the news is very promising that we are ever so closer and that we reach a polio-free world. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.